Hey guys, Neely here. I did a video yesterday about making baked potatoes in the Instant Pot, and I wanted to do a follow-up video for you guys with ideas for using up leftover baked potatoes. It's super easy to make a big batch, but if your family is like my family, when they see a big bag of baked potatoes in the fridge, they're not very excited about pulling them out and just eating them this way. So there are a lot of things that I like to do to give baked potatoes a second chance at life. The first thing I'm going to show you is just a simple roasted potato. For the littler potatoes, I like to just slice them in half the long way like this. And for a little bit larger potatoes, I just slice them into circles. I'm just going to do a small batch for you now. Just going to throw them into a bowl and add some spices and some oil. I don't usually measure, but for this small amount, it'll probably be about 2 tablespoons. Just like that. The exact measurement doesn't matter too much. You just want to make sure the potatoes get fully coated. And I'm using avocado oil. That's my favorite cooking oil, but you can use any kind of cooking oil you like. Then I'm going to put in a really big pinch of salt. You want lots of salt. It's probably at least a teaspoon. Then I'm going to do a big sprinkle of black pepper, probably about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. Probably about same for garlic powder. And again, 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. And that's the basic seasonings that I put on almost everything that I cook. But if you want to mix it up a little bit more, you could add some chili powder and get like a Southwest style, or you could add some thyme, and that would give you like a garlic thyme flavored potato. Both very good options. I'm gonna go ahead and do the chili powder today, probably about 1/2 teaspoon. And then I'm just gonna mix everything up to get it fully coated. You could also do this in a Ziploc bag. If I were gonna use this whole bag's worth, I probably would have just sliced them right into the bag and then mixed all the spices and oil up in there. It makes it easier. So now I'm just gonna put them on my pan, and I always like to use parchment paper for easy cleanup. I just have a cookie sheet under here, and I'm just gonna lay them flat onto the pan. When you have them flat on the pan, the bottoms will get nicely browned. Definitely don't want to crowd your pan, or else you'll get more of a steaming effect than a browning effect. Now you can see that my oven is off right now. I actually like to start these in a cold oven, and that's because in the preheating process, the lower coils get very hot very fast. It pumps out a lot of heat really quickly, and it will give you more of a browning effect than if you preheat your oven first. You do want to be careful because you can burn certain things if you cook them this way, because there is a lot of heat coming really quickly. So if you've never done it before, just kind of pay attention to your oven and watch it the first few times, just to make sure you're not burning anything. So I'm gonna put these on my lowest rack. So now I'm just going to turn my oven on bake up to 500 degrees. The potatoes have been going for about 15 minutes, and it's time to flip them over. You can see they getting a nice sizzle, which means they're going to be getting brown on the bottom. And I'm just going to flip them all over and cook them for another 10 to 15 minutes. All right, they've been going another 15 minutes, and they are done. They get all nice and crispy, and wouldn't you rather eat these than a leftover baked potato out of the fridge? Is it yummy? The next thing I like to do with leftover baked potatoes is dice them up real small and use them in breakfast burritos. I'm not going to do a demo on this for you today. These are some that I made a couple weeks ago, and I had them in the freezer, but I will put down in the description below the measurements for when I make about 10 burritos. I do about 12 scrambled eggs, about 1 pound of diced ham or cooked breakfast sausage, and then about 4 cups of the cooked potatoes. And I wrap them up. Sometimes I'll add a sprinkle of cheese as well. Wrap them up, freeze them on a pan in a single layer. And then once they're frozen solid, I just pop them in a Ziploc bag, and then I can pull them out for my husband for his breakfasts and his lunches. And as far as reheating them, I usually try to pull some out of the freezer and stick them in the fridge the night before, so then they're defrosted when it's time to make breakfast. and then I will just throw them on my Cuisinart griddler, this over here, and grill them up real fast, and they're perfect that way. If I forget to pull them out in advance, I will stick them in the microwave on defrost for about 5 minutes, and then I will grill them as well. The next thing I like to do with leftover baked potatoes is soup, and you can do any kind of potato soup with your leftover baked potatoes. There are tons of options. A couple that I've done is the creamy potato soup with bacon, as well as the wild rice soup, and I'll put links to those up in the cards. But today I wanted to do a potato broccoli cheddar soup. I'm going to be starting with something a little different, and I'm going to be doing a dedicated video on this very soon because these have been amazing time savers for me. I think I'm gonna call it a freezer soup base. But basically when I make soups and stews in the Instant Pot, there are several ingredients that are the same in almost every soup or stew that I make. So what I did was throw together all of those ingredients and freeze them and have a few in my freezer so that when it's time to make a soup or a stew, I can use this as my base, add my other ingredients depending on whatever soup or stew I'm making, and the prep work is mostly done. I've just been freezing the stuff in these extra plastic containers that I have that are smaller in diameter than my Instant Pot, so they'll be able to throw in really easily, and then once it's frozen solid, I run a little bit of water on the outside and it pops right out, and then I'm able to put it into a Ziploc bag and keep it in the freezer that way. I will put down below all the ingredients that I have in here, and I will list them for you here real quick. I do a cup of diced carrots, a cup of diced celery, and a cup of diced onions. And then I add my spices. I do 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of onion powder. And then I top that off with 2 cups of water and 2 cups of broth. And that is my soup base. So what I'm gonna do right now is put this in my Instant Pot and turn it on saute. So while I am preparing the other ingredients, the soup base will start to melt. So I'm just gonna press saute, just leave it the way it is. See? Now while that's doing its thing, I'm just going to dice up my potatoes. And I'm gonna use about 2 pounds of potatoes, and that's about 5 medium potatoes. Defrosted a little bit, got a little bit of liquid down there in the bottom, so now I'm just gonna add my potatoes to the pot and cook that. I don't wanna add my broccoli yet because if I cook that with everything else, it will be just absolute mush by the time the cooking is done. I prefer the broccoli to hold its shape a little bit better. And I'm gonna turn off saute mode and lock my lid. Make sure it's on sealing. And then you can either use manual or soup. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two. I'm just gonna do manual for 10 minutes. Since the potatoes are already cooked, the only thing that really needs to get cooked is the celery and carrots and onions, and they're diced up pretty small, so that shouldn't take too long. I am adding a few minutes because I'm starting with the frozen soup base. If you're just doing all the ingredients fresh, you could probably get away with cooking it only for 5 minutes. The last bit of pressure is releasing. I let it natural pressure release for a few minutes, and then I release the rest manually. And there is what it looks like. Now I'm going to put it on saute mode, and I'm gonna add my broccoli. I have about 4 cups of frozen broccoli florets. And I'm not gonna put the lid on and have it build up pressure again because these broccoli florets will cook really quickly in this already hot soup. And I also want to mention you can use fresh broccoli as well. You don't have to use frozen. After coming back up to a boil, it took about 4 minutes for the broccoli to get to the tenderness that I like it. Of course, adjust that to your liking. Now I'm gonna add my thickener. I like to use sweet potato flour that I get at my local Asian market, but you can use cornstarch or regular flour or arrowroot powder as well. And I am gonna use 1 tablespoon to start. That should be enough. And to add a little creaminess, I have 1 cup of coconut milk, and you can use regular milk or half and half or cream if you want it to be very decadent. And I'm just gonna add my thickener in with my coconut milk and whisk it in. And I'm just gonna add that to my pot. And now I'm gonna add my cheese, and this is totally optional if you wanna keep it dairy-free with the coconut milk. It's still a delicious soup the way it is, but I have 2 cups of cubed cheddar cheese, and it turned out to be about half of a pound. And I'm just gonna add that in and stir it until it is melted and combined. It takes a minute or 2 to get all the cheese melted and mixed in, but now it is done. All right, the last dish that I have for you is a cabbage and ground beef and potato skillet. This is a super frugal and budget-friendly recipe. I used a lot when the grocery budget is used up at the end of the month and I need to make things stretch. Potatoes, cabbage, and ground beef are all very cheap items. And actually right now in our area, ground pork is even cheaper than ground beef. And this recipe works great with ground pork as well, or ground chicken, ground turkey, any ground meat really. The first thing I'm gonna do is turn on my pan to medium-high heat and add about a tablespoon of cooking oil. And once that heats up, I'm gonna add my 1 pound of ground beef. This one is 15% fat, so I'm not gonna need to drain it at all. If you are using a fattier ground beef, you might want to drain some of the fat after the beef is cooked. I'm going to give the meat a little sprinkle of salt right now, but I will be adding some more seasonings as soon as the other ingredients are in. Now I'm just going to cook the meat until it's no longer pink. My meat is fully cooked now, and I'm going to just remove it from the pan and put it into my glass dish here. I reserved some of the fat because I want some to cook the cabbage in. And this is about half of a medium-sized head of cabbage, just shredded up. I'm gonna add it to my pan, and I'm actually gonna turn my pan up to high and try to get some nice browning on the cabbage. Now, it's tempting to just come in here and start stir-frying it, but I have found that if you just let it sit for a while and sizzle and leave it alone, you get the best browning. While it's browning, I'm just gonna add in my spices. I'm gonna do a half a teaspoon of onion powder and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder and a teaspoon of salt. All right, it's been cooking a couple of minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and stir it because I don't want it to burn. You can see it's got a little bit of color to it, the spot that was right at the bottom there. So now I'm just gonna stir fry it a little bit until it gets wilted. Probably take 3 or 4 minutes. And you want the bottom of the pan to get a little brown, but if it does seem like it's starting to burn, you can turn it down a little bit, and you can add just a tiny splash of water to get the browning off the bottom and onto your cabbage, and that'll give your cabbage a lot of flavor. The cabbage has been cooking for about 3 minutes now, and that's about as cooked as I want it. So I'm just gonna add my meat back in right now, and I'm gonna give my potatoes just a little sprinkle of salt, just to make sure the potatoes have salt on them. Even though there's salt in here, I just wanna make sure my potatoes aren't plain. Just get those coated a little bit and dump them right in. And now all I'm gonna do is stir fry it and let it cook until the potatoes are warm, and it will be done. There it is. I just removed it off the heat. It only took a couple minutes to heat the potatoes through. Super easy, super frugal, delicious, and filling meal. All right, guys, that's it for my leftover baked potato ideas. I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I will talk to you guys again soon. You say bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.